On center court, under a gray London sky that couldn't quite decide whether to rain, Jasmine Paolini stood at match point against a teenager who had already beaten the defending champion 4 days earlier, and for a moment, everything the Italian had endured in this strange, uneven season seemed to hang on a single return. Alexandra Ila missed it wide. And just like that, Paolini was through 6-4, 4-6, 6-3, into her second Wimbledon quarterfinal, and into a piece of history no Italian woman had ever touched before her. To understand why this match mattered so much, you have to go back further than the 2 hours and 22 minutes it took to complete. You have to go back to a season that, before this fortnight, had given Paolini almost nothing to smile about. A 30-year-old former world number 4. A Roland Garros finalist and Wimbledon finalist just 2 years prior, she arrived in London with a modest 12-7 record for 2026 and no second week at a major since last year's French Open. Whispers about her form had turned into open questions. Was this the beginning of a decline, or just a rough patch every career eventually survives? Then came the first round. Paolini walked out against Hertogenbosch champion Robin Montgomery and lost the opening set 6-0. Bagel. The kind of scoreline that ends tournaments, not launches them. But something shifted in that match. Paolini found her range, found her nerve, and clawed her way back to win. It was the sort of recovery that barely registers in a highlights reel, yet it may have been the single most important set of her entire season, because from that point forward, she looked like an entirely different competitor. She beat Viktorija Golubic. She beat a former top 5 player in Maria Sakkari. And then she walked into the fourth round to face the most talked about player left in the draw, a 21-year-old from the Philippines who had done something no one from her country had ever done at a Grand Slam. Ila's run to that fourth-round match was already the stuff of legend. 3 rounds earlier, she had dismantled Iga Swiatek, the reigning champion, in a result that sent shockwaves through the tournament. She had grown up practicing on makeshift courts, and now here she was on the most famous court in tennis, 1 win away from a first Wimbledon quarterfinal, standing in the way of a former finalist trying to rediscover herself. The two had met once before, back in Dubai earlier in the year, where Ila won comfortably in straight sets. That history mattered. Paolini knew exactly what kind of danger she was facing, a player with a whipping backhand that could redirect pace at impossible angles, and a competitor who thrived on the big occasion rather than shrinking from it. The opening exchanges gave no hint of the emotional roller coaster to come. Both players held with relative ease through the first few games, testing depth, testing patience, waiting for the other to blink first. Paolini blinked first, in the best possible way. In the fourth game, she broke Ila's disappointingly loose second serve, then backed it up with a comfortable hold to surge into a 4-1 lead. For a set that had started so evenly, that 3-game run felt seismic. Ila, to her credit, didn't fold. She trimmed the deficit, found a hold of her own, and even manufactured a break point that threatened to swing the entire match back in her favor. But Paolini kept finding answers. When Ila served to stay level at 5-3, the Italian broke straight back, sealing the opening set in just 51 minutes with a forehand that had been doing damage all afternoon. If the first set suggested Paolini had the answers, the second set flipped the script entirely. Ila came out sharper, more aggressive, and more willing to take the ball early. She wiped out an early break, seized control in the 7th game, and then produced one of the most remarkable holds of the entire tournament. Facing triple break point at 0-40, with Paolini surging and the match seemingly slipping away from her, Ila reeled off 5 consecutive points. 5 in a row, under that kind of pressure, on the biggest stage of her young career. It was the sort of composure that makes scouts and commentators sit up, because technique can be taught, but that kind of nerve under fire is much rarer. From 5-3, both players held to send the match to a decider, and the crowd, sensing they were watching something special regardless of the outcome, rose to their feet for Ila as she walked back to her chair. It was a standing ovation in the middle of a match she hadn't even won yet, a testament to how completely she had captured the imagination of the Wimbledon crowd over the previous week and a half. The third set is where matches like this are usually decided by something other than pure ball striking, and this one was no exception. Paolini surged again, going up 0-40 on Ila's opening service game of the decider, looking ready to press her advantage immediately. But the Filipina, again, found 5 straight points from nowhere, saved all 3 break points, and held for a commanding start. What changed from there wasn't really tactical. It was physical and it was mental. Ilya had played the longest grass season of anyone in the draw that summer, dating back over a month to Birmingham, and by this stage, a grueling 5-set equivalent battle across 2 matches in 3 days. The accumulation had started to show. There had been tape on her thigh, tape on her forearm, precaution she described simply as preventative. But precaution or not, her first serve percentage began to slip in exactly the moments she needed it most, and against a player like Paolini, who thrives on taking a fraction more time and redirecting pace, any drop in serve reliability becomes an invitation. Paolini took that invitation. At 5-3 in the decider, she found an untimely double fault from her opponent to open the door, then converted when Ilya's return sailed long. She served out the match with total conviction, dropping just 5 points on her own serve in the entire third set and facing not a single break point across it. 84% of her first serve points won in that final set. A serve that, on average across the match, had been clocked 16 kilometers an hour faster than Ilya's. 70% of first serves landing, and overall, 62% of those points won. 38 winners to 25. And in the extended rallies, the ones stretching between 5 and 8 shots that tend to reveal who actually wants it more in the biggest moments, Paolini won 56%. Those are not just numbers on a stat sheet. They tell the story of a player who, months into a form crisis, suddenly rediscovered the version of herself that reached a Wimbledon final and a Roland Garros final in the same season 2 years ago. The aggression was back. The willingness to close out points at the net was back. And perhaps most importantly, the calm was back. In her on-court interview afterward, Paolini didn't pretend the season had been easy. She called it a roller coaster, openly admitting there had been tough stretches, crediting her team for staying with her through them. She spoke about enjoying her tennis again, calling that enjoyment her superpower, a phrase that felt less like a soundbite and more like a genuine description of what separates her best tennis from her worst. Watching her afterward, smiling, animated, clearly relieved, it was hard not to draw a line back to that first-round bagel against Montgomery. Sometimes the lowest moment of a tournament ends up being the platform everything else is built on. For Ilya, there is no shame in this result, and very little reason for concern about what comes next. She becomes the first player from the Philippines to ever reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam in the Open era, a milestone that will be remembered long after this particular scoreline fades from memory. Beating a defending Wimbledon champion at 21 years old, on grass, a surface that rewards experience as much as raw talent, is not a fluke. It's a marker. The physical toll of this tournament, and of an unusually long grass swing that started over a month earlier, likely played its part in this particular defeat, but conditioning and scheduling are the kind of variables a young career can manage and correct. The tennis itself, the backhand that troubled Swiatek and troubled Paolini in equal measure, the composure to save break points at 0-40 not once, but twice in the same match, those are the ingredients careers are built from. For Paolini, the numbers carry a different kind of weight. She becomes the first Italian woman ever to reach multiple Wimbledon quarterfinals in the Open era, doing so in 2024 and now again in 2026. She also becomes just the second woman in the Open era to reach a Grand Slam quarterfinal after losing her opening set of the tournament by a 6-0 scoreline, joining Garbiñe Muguruza's run at the 2020 Australian Open in that very specific piece of tennis trivia. There's a pattern worth watching too. Every single time Paolini has advanced beyond the 4th round at a major, she has gone on to reach the final. Whether that trend continues will depend on her next opponent. Waiting in the quarterfinal is Marta Kostyuk, a Ukrainian who has quietly built the finest season of her career, winning the biggest title of her life in Madrid before reaching her first Grand Slam semi-final at Roland Garros. Paolini leads their head-to-head, though neither player has ever faced the other on grass, which adds a layer of unpredictability to a rivalry that otherwise favors the Italian. Kostyuk's aggressive, athletic game style isn't proven on the surface at this level, and that uncertainty may be the deciding factor in what should be one of the more intriguing matchups of the Final 8. There is a broader story unfolding here too, one that stretches beyond a single scoreline. A player who many had quietly begun writing off just 2 weeks ago has responded not with words, but with 4 straight wins, a signature victory over one of the form players of the season, and a level of tennis that resembles her very best. Whatever happens against Kostyuk, Paolini has already answered the biggest question hanging over her year. And for Ila, this defeat is simply a data point in a career that is clearly heading somewhere significant, one that will likely include center court appearances for years to come. Neither player left this match with anything to regret, and neither will be forgotten easily once the rest of this tournament plays out.